to Sew with Monty. Today I want to show you how to take a basic sleeve pattern and turn it into an extended sleeve cap or puff sleeve. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to the armhole that this sleeve fits, and we're going to align the armhole so that we have shoulder to shoulder. So I'm going to put my shoulders together like this, and I want to determine the space in which I'm going to put my gathering. So I get my shoulders together and I pin them down, and I've decided to go from my shoulder point downward in the back 3 inches and 3 inches in the front. You want to make sure that whatever you put in the back or front is the same as what is in the other side. So back and front should be equal here, 3 and 3 inches. Okay, so after you have that, you bring your sleeve over and you want to walk your sleeve to your armhole. So I'm going to take the armhole, and you always start at the under edge of your armhole, the armpit area, and you want to walk the very edge or the seam line of your pattern. So if you're working with a pattern that has seam allowance already on it, you want to make sure you hold the seam line. When I get to this gathering point right here that I've established where I want to be, I'm going to mark it on my pattern so that I know that that's where I'm going to start and stop my gathering. I'm going to do the same thing on the front, so I'm going to walk it out as well, right on the edge of my seam line. This pattern has no seam allowance, so I don't have to worry about that. And then I'm going to mark it as well. So now I have my starting and stop points on my sleeve where I want my gathering to be. The next thing is we're going to explode it and put in the amount of gathering we want. So my next move is I'm going to take my lines that I have here, and I'm going to draw with a heavier marker so you can see where I'm going with this. Not necessary if you're at home. Use a fine tip pen or a sharp pencil to do this. I'm going to go from my first gather point, which is on the back of the sleeve, and I'm going to take it all the way down to the intersection of my bicep level and my grain line. And I'm going to do the same over here. Now let's talk about this point. You don't want to open your sleeve cap up to expand it anywhere above the bicep level. This is as tall as you need to be. That being said though, I could lower my line where I want to open my sleeve. Let's say I want to make a very full sleeve cap. I could open it up down here, all the way down to the wrist line if I chose to do so. So any point from the bicep level down is acceptable to open the sleeve up to explode the cap to cause the gathering to fit in. But for this exercise, we're just going to use the sleeve cap itself from the bicep level line up. So once you have it like this, you want to cut it open on this line right here. And this piece is going to come completely out of the pattern. And we're just going to put it aside for a moment, like this. And then we're going to open it up here along the bicep level line, trying to leave a hinge at both underarm points. So I'm just going to try to keep those attached just slightly there. Be very gentle at this point so it doesn't rip off. If it does separate, it's okay. You can put it back together with tape. Now once I have my sleeve like this, and I'm going to work upside down so that you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to take a piece of paper and I'm going to place that piece of paper underneath the sleeve cap area. And I'm going to take the bottom part of the sleeve and I'm going to tape it down, secure it to my paper. Make sure your paper is plenty big enough so that when you start doing the manipulation, you don't run out of paper in the process. So I want to tape this down. I'm going to put some weights on each side of my bottom half of my sleeve so it doesn't move or curl while I'm doing the rest of my manipulation. Now let's go back and talk about all the pieces. Right now I have this area at the top is where I'm going to add more fullness. And to add more fullness, I'm going to gently bring these up on both sides so that they're even in the middle, like this. And I'm also going to take my line, my grain line right here, and I'm going to extend it up so I have it to balance my upper sleeve width. So I have this line here and I want to bring these up evenly. Now my goal here is I'm going to try to put 2 1/4 inches between each side of my sleeve, right here and right here. That's going to give me about a 1 3/4 inch ratio to 1. In other words, I'm going to add 3/4 of the space right here that I have here. So I want to keep moving this up and moving these up until I've found that these two edges right here are equaling 2 inches in here. Actually 2 1/4. So right now I'm 2, so I need to come up just a little bit more. I'm going to come up here, trying to raise these at the same level. You don't want to get one higher than the other or you'll get your space lopsided. Now I'm going to move this weight up here just so it holds this area down. I don't care about this one right now, but I want to keep these two in line. So now I'm going to bring this one in, trying to make an imaginary line here, if I can visualize this line, keeping it on the grain line, so that there's a smooth transition from this point to this point. And when I get that, I'm just going to measure off. I'm a little bit high, so I'm just going to come down just a little bit. So you just need to keep adjusting this until you get exactly what you want in there. But you can see how helpful it is if you've got these two pieces anchored by keeping them attached to the bottom sleeve. And then I'm going to slide this down, keeping it on the grain line, until I find 2 1/4. See, there's very close to 2 1/4. So I'm going to bring it up just slightly right here. I've got 2 1/4, and I want to see if I've got 2 1/4 over here, holding this down. Yes, it's actually 2 3/16. I'm going to just pop this up just a little bit more, and I should be right on 2 3/16. So keeping my grain line on my grain line, 2 1/4 and 2 1/4. That's perfect. So I want to hold this point, and I'm going to tape it down now, right here. And I'm going to take this one down. I'm going to take this one down. And then my next move is I'm going to blend off the spaces between my sleeve cap and my lower sleeve. So I'm going to tape everything down, and then I'll start blending it off. So give me a minute here to tape it all down. You want a lot of tape here because you don't want this to pull off. It's very important that it gets nice secure tape on there because it's now going to become one piece of a pattern. And you want to make sure you use plenty of tape. Tape is your friend. I don't care about the outside edge because I'm probably going to trim most of that off. Now you can see I've just got to connect this area in here very much like this. I'm probably going to take just a slight bit off that tip and fill this tip in. So what I'm going to do is take a smaller pin, and I'm going to take about 3/16 off this point and add 3/16 here. That way it balances it out. So my line will go from here and back to 0 up here. So this is the plan. I'm going to come off here and onto here and flesh out this sleeve cap a little bit more up here, tapering a little bit there. Now my notch for my gathering will now be down here where I first opened it up. So this will be my notch for gathering. And then I'm going to put all of this into the area that I anticipated on my armhole during where the 3 inches are. So let me just flesh this out a little bit and taper this off, and then we'll take the very curve and we'll smooth it out. So I now have my very curve, and I'm going to go ahead and smooth out my section right here between my space where my gathering goes. So I'm going to turn it this way first, and then I'm going to see, nope, still needs to be this way. You have to play with your very curve. I have to just adjust it and move it up a little bit so that I didn't get a round lobe in here. I want it to be nice and smooth. This will be my gathering point. This is where the gathering starts now, and it's going to gather all the way up to here. And it's going to smooth this one out, and we'll put the gather line here. So you have to just kind of go as far as you can with your very curve, and then pivot it and see what fits best from that point out. So it looks like to me that I might be better off using this side, and I might need to flesh it out just a little bit more than I've drawn before. So sometimes when you get in here, you have to check yourself and make sure that your line is going to be smooth. Everything up until the actual drawing of the line with the very curve is an estimation. But see how pretty that is? You want a nice, smooth, round top. And then my gather will go from here to here. So these two will be my gather areas. Now I don't have any seam allowance, so when I cut this out in my muslin or my fabric, I'll need to add seam allowance. Now the last thing we're going to do, we're going to just check our armhole one more time to make sure everything is where it should be. So I'm going to hold the edge, and there's my underarm single notch, and then right here is where my gathering will start, right at that point. So everything's lining up there, and we'll see how the back looks. If you need to make a slight adjustment, go for it. It's okay. Sometimes when you're doing this, you might find that it needs a little adjusting. Now the beauty of doing this, because I kept these two areas the same, I don't have to change my shoulder seam notch. It's still aligned to fit my armhole and not cause the sleeve to be distorted or swing from one side to the other. So now we're going to cut it out, and I'm going to sew up a muslin and show you how pretty this extended sleeve cap is. This is the extended sleeve cap sleeve, and I've sewn it in satin so I could see better how the gathering looked at the shoulder. I think it's turned out very nicely, and I want to note that by keeping that shoulder seam notch in the proper place, the balance of the sleeve is still good. There's no leaning back or forward on the sleeve. And here we have the front view of the sleeve. And you can tell it too looks very nice, and the gathering and the shoulder is very pretty. Zoom in a little bit so we can see it. But you can see how pretty it is, especially in the satin. And that's it. That is the extended sleeve cap sleeve.